What is the first word that comes to your mind when you hear the word addiction?
Drugs, alcohol, that kind of stuff.
What is the first word that comes to mind when you hear the word addiction?
Struggles.
Hardship.
Like something you can't get rid of.
Addiction is just like bound.
So addiction is one of the most stigmatized diseases in America. The language that we use to describe addiction as the public is usually not consistent with scientific evidence. So using words like maybe selfish or weak or irresponsible. So actually in a recent study, 63% of the general public described addiction as being due to personal or moral weakness, and that is not necessarily true. So we need to take steps as a public to modify our language use about addiction in order to align it with the scientific evidence, which we'll keep discussing throughout the video.
What percentage of college students do you think have an addiction?
I'm gonna say, like any addiction?
Any addiction?
I'm gonna say like 60.
60%?
It's around 35%.
Okay.
What percent of people? Any addiction at all? Or like?
Yeah.
Probably high. Like caffeine, soda, and all that stuff. Probably like 60 to 70%, maybe.
Okay.
I'd probably say like 80%.
80%.
Unfortunately, many people in the world suffer from an addiction or substance use disorder. However, there is a lack of research regarding how many college students in the world suffer from addiction or substance use disorder, even though we know that that might be a large number. Therefore, I urge the researchers in the world to really study this because I think it's important that we know how many college students suffer from addiction. However, Stacy Mosel is a licensed master social worker and a substance abuse specialist that studied substance use disorders specifically among college students. In a recent study, her and researchers showed that of a study of approximately 946 students, nearly half of those students met the criteria for at least one substance use disorder. Substance use is unfortunately common among college students and can result in so many difficulties between academics, personal problems, mental issues, social problems, and more. Therefore, it's really important that we know how we can stop substance use disorders and addictions among college students.
Do you think addiction is a brain disease?
I'm not sure if it's a disease. It's maybe like a disorder, like dysfunction. I don't know about disease. Disease, I think like germs or bacteria, virus kind of thing. But it could be like it's definitely malfunctioning in the brain somehow.
Yes.
Yes. Do you like why it's a brain disease?
From what I understand, it's like the dopamine rush of like stuff, is what I'm pretty sure, and like your brain gets like addicted to something, and like I don't know this.
That's great.
But there's something going on in the brain.
Something going on in the brain. I like it.
Like we mentioned before, we think that there is a lack of research when it comes to college students and the effect that addiction has on them. It was interesting going around and talking to college students about what they kind of thought addiction was in terms of, is it a brain disease or is it not a brain disease? And when we asked this question, is addiction a brain disease, we got several different answers, and it was interesting to hear the different answers. You got some people that believed that yes, it is a brain disease. There were some that said no, there were some that thought it doesn't start as one, but it can develop into one. And it was just interesting to see how they differed. And it kind of made us realize that a lot of college students don't understand the effect that addiction has on the brain and how there's biology behind it. And like we talked about in class, addiction is viewed in many different aspects. It can be viewed as a habit, excessive behavior of some sort. It can be someone's choice to be addicted to something. But I think a lot of times it's overlooked that it can be a brain disease. And again, like we talked about in class, according to the National Institute of Drug Abuse, addiction is a brain disease. It's a relapsing chronic disease that affects so many different people. And I just think that if people were more educated on it, especially college students, they would understand that it truly does affect the brain and that it can be classified as a brain disease.
What resources are there in the Valley for addiction?
I'm not super familiar with any. I'm sure and I know that a lot of churches offer resources, and that's really good.
I'm sure there's resources that you could find online that will put you there, but I don't know any specifically.
I know there are some, and there's like church, like support groups and things like that. I don't really know what they are, but I know they're there.
Yeah.
As we discuss resources in the Valley, we would hope that college students would know and understand that there are many treatment centers and resources available to them. Some of those include Bear River Health Department, which provides addiction treatment centers and recovery services, Cache County Drug Court, which is a court-supervised program that provides treatment and support for individuals who have an addiction and are involved in criminal justice, Logan Regional Hospital, which provides services including detoxification, inpatient treatment, and outpatient treatment services. And then more specific treatment centers include Clear Recovery of Cache Valley, Renaissance Ranch Outpatient Center, Newport Academy, and Adolescent Depression Treatment Center.
So in summary, public attitudes and opinion about addiction is not always accurate. There's a lack of knowledge about the scientific evidence behind addiction. So how do we decrease the stigmatism in our society about addiction? Studies have shown that being educated about the topic greatly decreases stigmatizing attitudes. So take a class, do your research, learn what addiction really is. Thanks for watching.